So as Cheryl mentioned, this session is about the FDA's update. We're going to focus on the COA Qualification Program, the ISTAND program, and the Patient-Focused Drug Development Initiative. Okay, it needs more drama. There we go. We'll also have a Q&A at the end of the session that will be moderated by Michelle. And here are the folks that will be involved in our session today. I'm going to go ahead and have them introduce themselves, but we have three presenters, and as I mentioned, Michelle will moderate and Selena will join us as a panelist. Perhaps we could start with Michelle.
Good morning, I'm Michelle Campbell, Associate Director for Stakeholder Engagement and Clinical Outcomes in the Office of Neuroscience.
Selena Daniels, Deputy Division Director in the Division of Clinical Outcome Assessment.
Robyn Bent, Director, Patient-Focused Drug Development, Office of Center Director, Center for Drugs. Thanks.
Vanitha, Sekar, thanks for inviting me. I'm new to this group, but I'm Division Director for David's sister division within the Office of Drug Evaluation Sciences that oversees Biomarkers, ISTAND, and Biomedical Informatics for safety.
Thanks, everyone. And we've successfully passed our mic test as well. So the first part will be on the COA Qualification Program, and I'll just continue. So it's pretty simple. I'll just highlight the stages for those folks in the audience who may not be involved in DDT qualification and provide the 2025 metrics. So in terms of the process, it's basically a three-stage process. We begin with a letter of intent. Often that sets up the qualitative work. We move on to a qualification plan. Often that includes reports from the qualitative work and a psychometric analysis plan. And then eventually, after all the hard work is done, a requester will submit a full qualification package, an FQP, and that's what we review in order to make a qualification determination. Along the way, in addition to the major milestones, we also receive updates. You can keep us informed, say, of the outcome of a trial, sending in a study report, and we accept meeting requests for interim meetings. For example, we might meet with a requester to talk about common methods across several of their DDT projects in their psychometric analysis plan. The stages have timeframes associated with them, 3 months for an LOI, 6 months for qualification plan, and 10 months for the FQP. However, the actual scientific review doesn't begin until after we've done a reviewability assessment, and the reviewability assessment has a couple of stages. We look at it administratively to make sure that all the pieces are there, that you followed the template. Then we recruit a few scientists, usually starting with a reviewer from DCOA, and start making a look that anything you labeled qualitative research study report actually has qualitative research data in it. And then we move on to a broader involvement of other disciplines as needed. These timeframes are difficult for us to meet given our current workload and staffing. So we do evaluate the metrics regularly and look at our work processes. Some of the things that we are doing or have done in the last year, I'd say, include defining a QRT, a qualification review team at the LOI stage that's abbreviated. If it's a high-level plan, and that's the intent, we may need fewer disciplines at that stage, and we can move the LOI along. For a qualification plan, we've started initiating what we are calling asynchronous review. So that's a good and a bad thing. What it means is if a reviewer is available between NDAs and CMPVs, that reviewer will start review for their discipline without the full qualification review team, and will take advantage of that availability. That means that there may be a gap after that work until the next discipline is available. So it's both a good thing and a bad thing in the sense of it's drawing out the review, but we're using the resources that we have. If we wait for a complete cross-disciplinary review team, particularly at the FQP stage where it involves folks from other centers potentially, that would be quite a wait. So we're trying to be flexible. In terms of the full qualification package, I think our intention is to set some limits at the reviewability stage. We've taken some time to meet with requesters, to send IRs, to provide preliminary feedback of what we've learned about the package. All that time, the clock hasn't started, quote unquote, on the actual scientific review. So I think it may be advantageous for us to move forward with our review and minimize the activities at the reviewability stage. So on to metrics. How did this work out in 2025? Well, let's see. We've got 67 projects in the program. Of course, milestones aren't the only activities. I mentioned we do other meetings. So pre-LOI meetings take place where we think it will be useful to help shape that high-level plan, or to inform a requester that we aren't the right pathway for achieving regulatory guidance. Again, we send out information requests and accept interim submissions. Here are the numbers historically. So 2025 is the last column. We saw submissions, a little hard for me to read, but 8 LOIs, I think 4 qualification plans, and 2 FQPs. FQPs were pretty beefy. Actually, if you look at the run rate, that's a pretty representative year for us, and considering we had some organizational changes in the first half of last year, I think that actually shows a good amount of productivity. And when you look at it across clinical review divisions within O&D, of course, we do support other folks and involve other centers. So, we are working with CBER and CDRH. But you'll see some divisions rely on us more in terms of DDT tools than others. And some of those are, I think, repeat customers from previous years. We also look at this from COA type. Most of our DDTs are PRO measures. But the other COA types are represented, and within the COA qualification program, we also look at DHT-derived endpoints, and Vanitha will talk a little bit more about ISTAND and the specific focus of that qualification program. Just a little background. We do have a listserv, so if you want to be immediately notified, maybe not immediately, of updates, qualifications, et cetera, you can sign up for the listserv. We do have a couple of FQPs under review, so we're looking forward to getting to a decision on those packages. And anything else we might send out, say an update to our templates or something we're adding to our public-facing website. Here are a couple of the links, so that should be in the CPATH meeting materials, and you can use that for your reference. And that's the end of the COA qualification segment. I did want to point out that I had my backup notes on paper, so if that's an interesting point of discussion for you, you might want to listen in on Friday. So anyhow, that's the end of the first part. Vanitha?
Good morning, everyone. Again, thank you for the opportunity to be here. This is a new group for me, so, no difficult questions, but David's always here. David's always here to bail me out. But I've introduced myself. I'm Vanitha Sekar. I'm the director of the division. It's a mouthful, but I'm going to say it out. Biomedical Informatics, which is really a small group of a team that really looks at innovative safety analysis and tools, informatics tools for O&D wide. And then the regulatory tool innovation, which is really the ISTAND program. Again, a mouthful, but I'll go into that in the next slides. And then the biomarker development team, which some of you may be familiar with. We sit in the Office of Drug Evaluation Sciences, that's led by Jeff Siegel, and then our super office is the Office of New Drugs. And today I'll be providing an overview of ISTAND, which is our newest permanent drug development tool qualification program. I'll highlight a couple of submissions that might be of particular interest. I will say this is a new and evolving area for us, so we are learning along with you, and specifically touch on some technology-based tools that really build upon established clinical outcome assessments. So the ISTAND is really, it's a mouthful, but it really is the innovative science and technology approaches to new drugs. Let me see. Having trouble here. I'm having the same problem. I'm switching between glasses and, okay.
Can you guys in the back, if she says next slide, can you guys advance for us?
That's fine. So now,
They'll advance for you.
oh,
Just say
okay.
next slide.
No, that's okay. So DDT qualification program, like I said, we're what? Four different programs. The animal model qualification program does not sit within the Office of Drug Evaluation Sciences. The other two do, right? The clinical outcome assessment and the biomarker qualification program. And the ISTAND came about because we found that there was these category of tools that didn't very nicely fit into biomarkers or clinical outcome assessments. So the 21st Century Cures Act allowed us to kind of develop this program as a pilot program, I believe in 2020, which was really to look at tools that were not biomarkers or clinical outcome assessments, but would still be useful as drug development tools. Like I said, it's tools that don't fit nicely into biomarker or COA categories. It turned into a permanent program in July of 2025, and it really formalizes support for new, novel, science-driven approaches, and it's a platform really to qualify drug development tools that don't fit into either David's division in COA or into the biomarker development program. It aligns with the current FDA initiatives, which is the roadmap to reduce animal testing, and it also supports tools that incorporate artificial intelligence and machine learning. It really follows the same process as you heard David touch upon. I might go under let you look under the hood a little bit more, but really the principles are the same. And this is the website you can go to. We try to publish information on really cutting-edge tools that have recently been accepted. I mean, you see, we'll notify about important things like the program, if there's big changes in guidance, in guidelines, I won't say guidance, guidelines on submission, on LOI, contents, and things like that. So the qualification steps, it's really, again, follows the same principles. It's a three-stage process with a letter of intent that's really a proposal that specifies the unmet need you're trying to fulfill, a little bit about the drug development tool itself. Most importantly, of course, context of use. And what's really important for us as we built ISTAND is that the context of use needs to have a regulatory intent. A lot of these tools are useful internally for different reasons, for making no-go, no-go decisions and such. Those are outside of the FDA purview. So we look for context of uses that are really going to have a regulatory intent or help in regulatory decision-making. That's followed by a qualification plan, which is really like, I would like to say, like a protocol, really. Like, what are you planning? What are the things you're planning to do to satisfy your context of use, the evidence that you're going to generate, right? So to say, is your tool, and sufficient information that the tool is validated enough to be able to do that. And finally, the full qualification package, which comes in with all of that data needed to support the context of use. Finally, we have I really can't read this. And finally, I wanted to stress on the transparency part, and I'll show you a slide that will take you to that website, but it's the requirement that we must publicly post key details of the DDT submissions at each review stage, so that we are transparent about the qualification process. I will say, it might look like it's hard to use, but actually once you get into it and you know what you're looking for, it's pretty intuitive. And requesters may also request, as David touched upon, pre-LOI meetings. We've also been encouraging pre-QP meetings because we find that sometimes is a bottleneck for us, because it's really the place where we'd like to align early with requesters on what we like to see in your full qualification package to satisfy your proposed context of use. Okay. A little bit about, I know that David touched upon the fact that we have a really cross-functional review team, right? What we call the qualification review team. But to kind of give you a little bit more about that, we have the Otis lead, who really is from either the clinical outcomes team or the biomarker team or the ISTAND program, or sometimes both, depending on if there's an overlap. And then we have our clinical divisions and our statistics groups, farm talks if needed, more and more as we're looking at tools that are designed to replace, reduce, or refine use of animals. CDRH for a lot of device-related evaluations. We have the clinical pharmacology team, which is really where the AI/ML expertise sits within CEDA, and we have CBER representation as appropriate. So the work of the QRT is really to do a thorough review and recommend whether they accept a submission, if it's at LOI or QP stage, or accept for qualification at the FQP stage. This then goes to a DDT committee, which is the Drug Development Tool Committee, which really consists of senior experts, management from both CEDAR and CBER, and that's really, as of now, our governance body that really, then reviews the QRT recommendations and then decides or proposes whether to qualify the DDT or to accept. A lot of times they also provide guidance at various steps as to what else could be, what other advice or guidance we can give the requesters. Okay, so I think David gave you overall timelines. I'm going to be just a little bit more transparent here and stress on the fact that these are target timelines, right? So David gave you timelines for the LOI, it's 30 days. For our QP stage, it's 50 days. For FQP, 50 days. And those are initial, what we call initial assessment or reviewability assessments, which we take some time to look at, because it's really, as you saw previously, it's a pretty big effort to bring all these people in together to start looking at submissions. So we first want to get a first take on whether these are reviewable. Once they are reviewable, we let the requester know that it is, and then that's when the clock starts, so to say. And I use the word clock to be consistent with INDs and NDAs, but really we are not a PDUFA driven program. So we are not governed by PDUFA timelines. We impose these timelines on ourselves. They're pretty ambitious, and we are doing better about prioritizing submissions, trying ways to streamline assessments, and we do well, reasonably well, but it's hard because we're competing with PDUFA resources, right? So the same SMEs that are working on important submissions also work with us. So that's something to keep in mind. But we very much understand the importance of these tools, so we are trying our best to kind of accommodate that. I did want to stress that the review clock stops or pauses if we send out an information request or an IR. So it depends on whether it's a major or a minor information request. We may tell the requester to send us back a response in 2 weeks. We're obviously very flexible. If it's going to take longer, that's fine, but understanding that the review clock stops while that back and forth is going on. So the progress of ISTAND since it started as a pilot, I mean, we started as a pilot, I think we said no more than 3 submissions a year we would accept into the program. I mean, it's been really healthy and the response has been great. So we actually transitioned into a permanent program last year. And you'll see here that many of them are in the LOI stage. That said, I think we're moving along really nicely into the later stages. We have QPs that are under review. We have 2 full qualification plans as well under review. And we're getting more and more requests for pre-LOI meetings, which, again, are pretty resource intensive. But for tools that are important and complex, we do encourage these discussions early on. And, I'm trying to now classify these tools so that, we're reporting out more and more, both internally and externally. So we've categorized them as NAMs, or novel alternative methods. These are tools like microphysiologic systems, in vitro systems, in silico models to replace, like I said, animal testing. The second is what I call clinical decision-making tools, and then a category of other, which I'm also trying to dig into more historically to see what those others are. Anyway, this is a snapshot, very busy slide, but it's really to capture what's happened, at least over the last couple of years that I've been at the agency as division director for this program. So the review timelines are shortening. The average LOI decision time, for example, is reduced by about, I would say, 50%, and this has been also reported externally, and we've looked at it internally as well. We do track our metrics pretty regularly. And I think that reflects experience in novel alternative methods within the FDA, as well as the maturation of the ISTAND program, putting more processes in place, streamlining things, making sure we use our SME resources wisely. Early alignment with regulatory expectations, I think, is important. I think you've heard that from me over and over again. I think it can help successful submissions. And we've seen a variety of organization types, right? We've accepted technologies from large pharma company, from biotech companies, small NAM developers, academics, consortia, nonprofits. And the context of use, I mean, it's been the real challenge here to get people to understand what really would fit into the ISTAND program. But I think we're getting better, and that's what is used as a primary determinant of reviewability even and acceptance. It's really, it's not just the scientific rationale, I have a great idea, so I'm going to propose this to ISTAND. It really has to show us a drug development need for where it's going to fit in and why is it relevant from a regulatory perspective. And clear articulation, like I said, of the regulatory decision-making is really important. We've had to turn down a lot of LOIs that came in that look great as tools, but really not within FDA purview. So the technology trends in ISTAND, we see a lot of in vitro NAMs with a lot of representation of these microphysiological systems that propose to mimic the human system better than the animals do, technologies that address regulatory safety and pharmacology. We have in silico methods, AI/ML approaches, and those are usually clinical applications. So a little bit, the next 2 slides, I'm going to touch upon a couple of examples, and I think these are the only 2 we have. Like I said, this is an evolving area for us. It's 2 tools that one that was, I think, accepted in 2022, the LOI, and this was a multimodal AI tool for depression and anxiety. And the second was a more recent one, the Eastman PASI, that was a mobile AI image analysis tool that would help with PASI scoring in psoriasis trials, and the need was really operational to reduce site visits. So these are innovative approaches to clinical outcome assessment, and are really, the drug development need is really to use these technologies to improve measurement, both quality or trial feasibility. They either help to make the assessment more consistent or more practical, right? Reduce operational burden, for example. Very important to note why they fit into ISTAND and not David's division is because it's not a brand new endpoint, but rather a potentially better way to capture an existing one. So again, I mean, to highlight what the key distinctions are, it replaces existing, it replicates existing COAs and are not new instruments. They often use the new technologies like AI or machine learning. They require really strong analytical validation. So the implication is that the technology is new, but the clinical concept that's being studied is familiar and established. The question is really whether the tool measures the established assessment credibly and usefully. And like I said earlier, the main things we look at are analytical validation, the credibility and the transparency of the AI model, whether it's explainable, do you have the right training data sets, are you validating with an independent data set, and then meaningful change and usability in terms of clinical utility. And going back, like I mentioned, this is the DDT transparency database. It actually, you can filter for ISTAND, for clinical outcomes, for biomarker development by the stage of the submission. And I think it's pretty useful information because we're pretty good about putting these in right after the acceptance memo goes out to the requester. So I think that's one of the values of our program, that we want to make these data information available for other developers to leverage. And I believe that's all I have. Thanks for bearing with me.
All right, good morning, everyone. All right. Yay. Oh, I can't really see that. All right, well, sorry. So good morning, I'm Robyn Bent. I'm the Director of Patient-Focused Drug Development here at FDA. And I thought I would start off my presentation by just kind of giving a very selected kind of overview of patient-focused drug development, kind of where it began and kind of where it's going. And I'm going to do it quickly because I know that you're really here for the questions and answers, and so I will get through this as quickly as possible. But I just wanted to point out that there was the 2009 PRO guidance before kind of patient-focused drug development began, and I'll speak to that a little bit. And of course, patient-focused drug development really began with the patient-focused drug development meetings, and those came about as part of FDA's effort to evolve the benefit risk, to develop and evolve the benefit risk framework. And so you can see here that this is kind of a snapshot of the benefit risk framework. And what we realized was that without patient input, that therapeutic context that is really so critical, that understanding where the unmet medical needs are and things like that, we're really not going to, it was going to be hard to really understand those trade-offs without hearing from the patients about what their lived experiences were. And so we started with the patient-focused drug development meetings as a way to inform the benefit risk framework. But what we heard, and what everybody knows at this point, right, is that like hearing that information at the end, at the time when a drug is coming into FDA or a medical product is coming into FDA, is really such a missed opportunity for us to incorporate the patient perspective. And so as part of the hearing from patients about the fact that endpoints didn't matter, that were being measured weren't endpoints that mattered to them, that the clinical trial process was excluding them, was too difficult for them to participate in, et cetera, we realized that we needed to really start everything a little bit earlier. And obviously that meant that you all needed to, we want to encourage you all to start things a little bit earlier. And I think we've seen a lot of really, really great uptake take on that. And so we developed the methodologic guidance series, and you can see, as I think probably 95% of you know, this is a 4 guidance series that we have been working on. And some of it doesn't necessarily need to lead to a COA. Some of this patient experience data is patient experience data in its own right that can kind of inform things. And the first guidance is, of course, finalized, and that's about collecting the comprehensive and representative input. The second guidance is methods to identify what's important to patients. The third, my personal favorite, is selecting, developing, or modifying fit-for-purpose clinical outcome assessments, and it's my favorite because it just works the way my brain works. And then the fourth is incorporating clinical outcome assessments into endpoints for regulatory decision-making, and we're still working to finalize this guidance. And of course, as you can see, this really does, everything builds on itself. It doesn't have to continue to build, but that really rich qualitative basis from that we talk about as the foundation will be important to build up to that COA, even though it doesn't necessarily always lead to a COA. And with that being said, I'm super excited to hear about the RDCA DAP's effort to kind of collect that qualitative data. I think that would be really, really important. What I think would be helpful for us at FDA to use it, and I'll look at my colleagues and see if they are sending me don't say that comments, but I think if there's also the ability to collect the protocols, the manuals, and the interview guides as part of that, so that we really understand kind of how that was done. And I'm sure, Cheryl, that was something that you were thinking about, but I'm just saying it explicitly because I think that will be particularly helpful for us if we're going to try and use any of that. So one of the things that we've done this year, and one of the things that you would note in the 2009 guidance, we talked a little bit about what type of information we wanted to have submitted to support a clinical outcome assessment. And this year that's something that people have been asking us about, because I think we've been pretty open with the fact that we plan to withdraw the 2009 guidance when the PFDD guidance series of 4 is complete. And so people have been concerned about the fact that that maybe some of that important information that's in the appendix of the 2009 guidance about what to submit was not included as a core part of the guidances that have come out so far. So in September, as part of one of our methodologic challenges meetings, we rolled out our new idea for a COA dossier. And I know we got really great feedback from people during the meeting. We got great feedback from people as part of the public comment period, and we have been working to kind of revise that and reflect that feedback and make it so that it's more useful to you all. Of course, as a reminder, this is something that's voluntary. It really was our goal to just provide the transparency. It's not really asking for anything that we don't usually ask for as part of the process as a whole. It's really just kind of putting it out there in a document to make it clear, because we still do have a lot of problems with missing data. I think I hear frequently from my colleagues that sometimes we'll get a meeting request where people are saying, do you think this instrument is appropriate for use? And the instrument isn't actually included as part of the meeting package, which makes it really challenging to even consider the question, let alone to answer it. I think it sounds like sometimes we're not getting information about the scoring details and other things that mean that we have to do the information requests, or we aren't able to answer the questions in the way that everybody hopes because we just don't have that right context. So part of this was really just to provide that transparency and kind of a checklist, not a checklist because we wanted to be thoughtful, but kind of a guide for things to think about to kind of trigger your thinking as you move forward. And so that was one of the things that we've been working on. Of course, we continue to work with people related more broadly to patient experience data, to really hear from our sponsors when you do a submission, to please tell us kind of what you're submitting as far as patient experience data. Please tell us where you've submitted it. I think we've shown in other presentations unnamed files and unnamed folders that we don't know where patient experience data is, and it's a subfolder of a subfolder of a subfolder, makes it really hard for us to use that really important patient experience data. And then, of course, if you can tell us how you think it would be useful to us, like why you're submitting it, I think that is also really helpful. I think it's difficult for our reviewers to kind of go on a fishing expedition looking for patient experience data that might be submitted and then try to figure out exactly how it was that you submit, what was the reason that you submitted it, how is it going to be informative to us. A bunch of transcripts is really great, but kind of why? So we're still working on that as well. This is just, and it's the same link I gave you last year, but I did update the screenshot. It's just the link of upcoming externally led patient-focused drug development meetings. We thought that we really get good feedback that people find this useful, because otherwise you have to kind of troll patient websites looking for where there might be patient-focused drug development meetings happening. We are also planning an FDA-led patient-focused drug development on chronic non-healing wounds that we're really excited about. I think we see those areas where there's not a specific patient group in that space, because chronic wounds kind of cross so many patient groups. We see that as a great opportunity for a patient-focused drug development meeting, and that registration is open. It will be happening in August. And if anyone has any patients that they want to reach out to and recommend that they participate, we would be very excited about that. And then finally, other PFDD activities. So we are working through a CIRSE with the Triangle CIRSE in North Carolina on training, and several of you are involved in that effort. So the training on the PFDD guidance series, both internal for FDA training and external for more broad training. And so we're really excited about the progress that has made, and grateful to everybody who is working with us on that. We are, as I mentioned, we've had the public meetings related to methodologic issues, and in the last year and a half, I think we've had some really great sessions on embedded interviews, Delphi methods, age norm scores, baseline severity and its impact on your ability to detect change, meaningful score regions, the intersection of meaningful aspects of health and help me, I'm having a moment. No, COI. Concept of interest. I was really having a conflicts of interest moment, because I am a bureaucrat, and that's what COI means, and so apologies. And then of course the data standardization and such. And all of this is work that's done with our colleagues kind of across FDA. A lot of our colleagues in CDER, as you can see, we're taking up some of their time really trying to move this forward. Our colleagues in the Office of Biostatistics, in addition to the clinical pharmacology, our colleagues in the Office of Biostatistics are really richly involved in the ISTAND, the AI, and the DHTs and things like that, as well as the generation of the dossier and the PRO, and the PFDD guidance series, along with our DCOA colleagues and others. So there is a lot going on. We did recently publish the Patient Preference Guideline, the International Council for Harmonization Patient Preference Guideline, which I am very, very excited about, and I would actually encourage you. I moderated a panel, and I was adequate, but the panelists were really exceptional and gave some, and there was a panelist from 6Cells who really gave some concrete examples of how incorporating a patient perspective into the development of the patient preference study, the fielding of the patient preference study, et cetera, led to a successful study. And I think that the examples that she provided in her presentation really cross beyond just patient preference studies, but I think clinical trials as well, because this is historically a really difficult population to access, and the partnering that they did with the drug development was really led to a really successful study. So if you're ever looking for an example or something compelling to really encourage people to think about how patient groups and patients can be critically important, I would say that panel and her talk, her example in particular, was particularly compelling. And then finally, we are still working on the COA grant program, And we've had 2 of our grants, the mucous migraine and the new coat physical function, kind of complete, and we're excited about that. I'd say that the mucous, which was vector psychometrics, and I know that's not the full name, and RJ corrects me every time, and I can't remember it. I'm sorry. And they have a lot of the deliverables on their webpage, the literature report, the concept elicitation protocol and report, the cognitive debriefing protocol and report, measure development report, and the conceptual model, as well as a video that explains the conceptual model to patients. And I think we're really excited about that, because a lot of times people ask us for examples of what we expect to see or things like that, and that has those are some great public facing materials. And so I think it's been a busy year. I think we expect it to get busier, and with that, I thank you for your time.
Hello, everyone. I know we're having someone join us up on stage, so Lily, come on up. And I would introduce myself in Robyn's most famous way. She loves how I introduce myself, which is I don't need no introduction. I also am just going to go out here and publicly state it. If I am not my normal extrovert self this week, sorry. I've had a really been out of work for 4 weeks on a family emergency, and I'm returning just this week. So please give me some grace. If I don't feel like smiling, just don't take it personal. So as Lily comes up and joins us, and Lily, if you'd like to introduce yourself, because you got a new job title recently, and I will butcher it. So would you like to introduce yourself real quick?
Is it on now? Yep. Okay. I thought I could just be, lazy today. But Lily Gerard, supervisory mathematical statistician. So I'm the supervisor for the patient-focused statistical scientist group. I have several of our team members here in the audience today. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Lily. I exercised really hard on the train ride down this morning as we were running down escalators. So I want to thank my FDA colleagues this morning to give some updates from really last year. And David kind of highlighted it. When you guys saw us a year ago, we were pretty raw. Like, you were seeing us very raw last year. It was a really rough, 2 weeks at that point. We were not even a week out from our April 1st. And so I hope you see the commitment to the staff to continue to get work done and to continue advanced drug development and COA development and drug development tools, despite what we faced last year, those challenges. And those challenges aren't going away. They're still there. And we are still committed to providing the best advice we can, commitment to science, and the commitment to rigor that we need to see. We had some really great highlights of some programs today, and I just want to echo one thing about, as someone who's in a clinical office, is when it comes to our pathways that are outside of the IND landscape, we see you all come in. And so just remember that if you're going to pick a pathway that's outside of your IND, because you think one may be quicker than the other, when you get outside of the Office of Drug Evaluation Science and you're getting to your Office of Biostatistics and your review divisions, you are also hitting the same reviewers. And so, unfortunately, our internal resources are now even more confined. And so sometimes we are delayed in those things because we may be competing against 3 NDA reviews or a Commissioner Voucher Program review, and we have to make decisions on what are we picking. We want to be able to give advice to as many people as possible in any possible way if we could. We really wish we could, because there's so many great ideas to want to advance drug development. So just note that while something may look really great on slides, when it comes to when the rubber meets the road and it comes into us, and I have to say to David or I have to say to Vanitha, I don't have a reviewer right now. We may not get one for 3 months. It's because we've really looked hard and deep. But that's just the reality when you get into the division staff that is also dealing with stuff. But not to sound negative about that, let's try to talk some positive. So I'm going to start with a question, and then I'm going to open it to the floor. Cheryl kindly asked you to only ask one question. I'm going to go one step further and say, please do not make it a bazillion parts. Pick the most important part of your 5.1 question you have. Also, please give your name and who you're affiliated. If you don't ask questions, I do call on people. So I do add that on for that. So we had a really great overview of ISTAND today, and I think a lot of us, even us, I was like, great, I need to hear what's going on in ISTAND these days too, because we get a lot of questions about this. So David, how does DCOA interact with ISTAND versus a DCOA program where there are the opportunities to collaborate with that efforts? Because it's a little blurry. I think we all agree it's a little blurry, and we are still working together in really how to respond to these letters of intent that are coming in.
Thanks for the question, Michelle. David Reasner, Division of Clinical Outcome Assessment. Yeah, I think it helps to provide a little background. So you might recognize that for the COA Qualification program, DCOA provides both operational support. So we manage the program, we post things on websites, we schedule meetings, we recruit QRT members from the O&D clinical review divisions, and we are also SMEs, so we sit on that QRT, usually in an organizational lead role. So that changes for ISTAND, but we're on the QRT when there are measurement questions and COA-like questions. But we're relieved of the burden of organizing the whole QRT and finding other reviewers from disciplines we might not usually work with so that we can provide support and still do our main COA qualification work. And it's worth mentioning, I think also in the context of PFDD, that Robyn's grant program, which has made great progress, also recruits reviewers from DCOA to participate and provide their expertise.
Of course, because it would be really weird if we didn't.
if we didn't have them. All right, so let's start thinking, getting up some questions. I don't know who my runners are. Who are the runners? Okay, so we've got 2 runners. So put your hands in the air if you want to ask a question, or I will call on you, and I know names. All right, I see a hand right here. So, you guys all chuckled when we reminded you about submitting your instruments, but that is the reality. I mean, we yesterday were in a meeting. I was with DCOA in that meeting too, and we're like, so that next submission, can you send that instrument in, please, that you just spent 20 minutes telling us how great it was? I know if you come into an ON division and we get the meeting request, the number one comment I tell the RPM and the response is, please make sure they submit the instrument they want to talk about, because that will be the first IR that goes out. So please, 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 we're not saying it because we think it's a cool thing to say repeatedly every year. We can't give you the best advice if we don't have actually the documents that you want us to actually review. And I'll add in a caveat. If you're referencing literature as your basis of scientific justification, those articles too, please. All right, so my first question over here.
Thank you, Michelle. This is really great. I've come back after 10 years and so, and come back to this conference, and looking forward to see all the updates, and it looks really good. The question I have is procedural, and it's related to the process of when the new dossier will be submitted. I have, in my experience, seen trials fail after a lot of investment from the industry at phase 3 because the instrument wasn't properly validated. It was a COVID case and there wasn't no time. But I do wonder, is it worthwhile thinking about submitting the dossier, let's say, at the end of phase 1? And I'm just asking that because you have your constraints. So.
All right, so I think that's going to be a joint, maybe Selena, Lily. I can throw in some thoughts from a division perspective. So Selena, if you want to kick that off.
Yeah, I can start. I mean, again, ultimately, when you are submitting your evidence to us, it's what you have, right? So if it's at the end of phase 1, if you have all the evidence compiled for that COA, sure. But most of the time, people are still at rolling basis, you know what I mean? So we're asking the evidence as you are generating it so we can review that. So again, it depends on where you're at the stage of development of your instrument. Again, if you're completely developed your instrument and you have everything, you can compile it nicely, we're more than welcome to review it. But again, also keeping in mind, also realistically, if you don't think you're going to get down to phase 3, then it may be for not. So thinking strategically where you're at with your development program. And I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything.
Lily, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with everything Selena said. Just something I want people to keep in mind is that the dossier is a template, right? So think about when or how best to utilize it. If you have all the information, every single piece of information that we have in there, great, we will review it. If you have some, but you think it's important for us at that point of your development for FDA to take a look and give you some feedback, go ahead and just include what you have up to that point. There are sections in there, I think we included instructions in the dossier, that if you don't have something, just say you don't have it, right? Or give us a reason why certain piece may not be needed, things like that. Just so I welcome people to continue to take a look at it and think about how best to utilize it. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think what's important to emphasize what Selena said is this thinking about it strategically and when you want to let us know. So perhaps you're not going to have everything or a portion until the end of phase 2. But if you tell us that early enough so we can anticipate it, right? So if we get to an end of phase 2 meeting and we haven't seen it, we'll be like, hey, you told us back at the last type C meeting you were going to submit this. What's going on, right? Because if it's like, oh, we have to add this or whatever, we can give you the better advice. And so I know can be the struggle between how much a company going to want to tell us. We hear this all the time from you guys. I sometimes think we do preach to the choir in this room because it's not you guys. You guys are doing that internal fight a lot of times to try to get advice from us. But if you can, think about it strategically and you give us that heads up early in your planning, then we at least know that actually helps us be able to, as a review division, say, hey, we're going to need DCOA at this point and we're going to need PFSS at this point. And so we can also prepare what that would be too, is really important. All right. Come on. No question. Guys, you're disappointing. Okay, I see a Robyn Carson in the back too, so go to her next after this person.
Hi, Shani Egan from Ultragenics. I have a one-part question, I think.
Thank you. Because come on, let's be good measurement scientists here.
I was curious how you all are thinking about the content and timing of finalizing PFDD guidance for, as it relates to the revisions to the dossier template and how that might impact it, if at all.
That is all you, Robyn Benz.
So I think we're still looking at exactly how that will work. We've had some considerations about whether it's the dossier is something that we could put online as opposed to attaching as the last 20 pages of a 70-page guidance, and and so that's still a work in progress. But I think the dossier should not hold up the publication of guidance for. We're working to get that out as quickly as we can. Thanks.
So we got Robyn Carson, but I'm making sure I don't miss anyone on this side. No hands over here? Okay, just making sure. Okay, Robyn.
Hi, everyone. Robyn Carson from AbbVie. First wanted to start with a point of gratitude. Michelle, you mentioned the tough year you've all gone through, and I just want to say thank you. We see it. We see how hard you work. You're all still here. It's incredible. So thank you for your commitment. Second of all, I loved, Michelle, how you started off giving us tips. I think I always tell my team to shine the mirror on yourselves first. What can we do better to help you, especially as your resources are constrained? So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your top wish list for us. What can we do better as researchers, as submitters of evidence? You've named a few already that are really easy wins, but what else can we do?
All right, so for my panelists, we'll all contribute our top one, since there's 5, 6 of us, so you get your top 6 that way. Plus, it could take forever. We love our list. All right, so
I'm happy to start. For me, it's context of use. Really, please think carefully before you send in a submission as to why you're sending it to that certain program. I mean, David and I talk a lot. Selena and I talk, so we can always do that. But remember, it's an additional thing we have to do. So if you can think through carefully why you're submitting where you are and what you want to get out of it early on, that's really helpful.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. Who knew that shirt I wore 2 years ago was going to come back and haunt us, right? What is your context of use? A good one. Lily, what would be your number one?
She stole mine. I do want to re-emphasize this think. Be very clear about why you wanted us to look at this. I can't tell you how many times we get something and we read all of these descriptions. In the end, we look at each other. What do you think? What are they trying to do? That's not good, right? Because it takes time and for you to prepare, and it takes time for us to read. And then now we're going to be coming back to you asking the question. So I'm going to borrow the principle we have in PFDD guidance through this rationale-based framework. I think it applies here. You need to support your rationale, right? You have a reason to do something. If there is things that you need to support, provide the evidence. Don't wait for us to come back to you and ask in an IR, because that delays. And I know you all want things done faster, and we want to do things more efficiently too. So re-emphasizing that point.
Robyn, what would you like?
So if I could say one thing, it would be show your work. And what I mean by that is you all live in this day in and day out. You think about this all the time. What you're sending to us typically doesn't always, we don't live in your head, we don't live in your program. And so sometimes things that seem obvious to you because you've been thinking about it 24/7 for a few years are not necessarily obvious to us. So the more you can contextualize things, the more you can help us understand why you've made a decision to go in a direction that you've gone in. It's not that we inherently dislike a direction, it's really that maybe we don't understand the rationale and the thoughts for it. So maybe if you have somebody who isn't intimately involved in your program look at this and see if your requests or your questions make sense with the context that you've given, it would, I think, make things a lot easier for our reviewers. Thank you.
Selena?
Yeah, I guess for mine, it's going to be probably two parts. Sorry, Michelle. For mine, I think it's probably asking a strategic question. So when you have interactions with us, with the agency, be thoughtful in terms of the questions that you give. Like in the IND stage, just don't ask, do you agree that this tool is fit for purpose? And then you don't give us anything at all, not the instrument, not the evidence. You're just pointing out a summary of things like how this could maybe fit a need. So be thoughtful in terms of the questions. If it's something that specifically you want to ask about your instrument in terms of, the content, or, if it's specific about the measurement property, spell it out for us so we can help you. The second part, because sometimes this carries on into the NDA stage, is you won't give us, like we said, a dossier, nothing. It's just, we don't even know how we're trying to fit in and what we're trying to review to support how you're trying to get your claim, if it's a claim or if it's sort of supposed to support the benefit risk assessment. I think that goes back to what Robyn was tying into in terms of the patient experience data. Sometimes we see patient experience data from advisory panels, and we're wondering, what do they want us to do with this? Is this to support the content validity of the COA? Is this just to say, support the need for our product? So telling us how you plan to use your patient experience data, giving us enough information so we can review, enough information to answer your questions. I think I'll stop there, but yes, just giving us what we need.
David, what's on your wish? What's your number one wish?
Yeah, so I guess it's more of a theme here. So I guess I would say, I think you should spend your time more wisely. It's your meeting time to spend. So if you want to spend 30 minutes presenting the slides that you already sent, if you think that is important, that's your time to spend. We won't tell you to stop, right? If you, in phase one, are asking us about data structures for your NDA that's 5 years and $800 million away, that's okay, but you're not going to get a really detailed answer because I don't see that as a good use of our time. We'll refer you to resources. So, think about how you spend that time. And in some discussion yesterday, this topic came up. So I guess I'll advocate for you. Think about how a Type C meeting that's very focused on COA and what you need to know helps you strategically and maybe clears the air before a milestone meeting like end of phase 2. If you want to talk about item reduction, item modification, do that 4 months before in Type C. Don't ask us 10 questions. Just try to get your items sorted out. Then you don't have to worry about that in terms of the endpoint discussion at end of phase 2. So I would just advocate for yourselves and use your time wisely.
So I would just add from a clinical review division standpoint is please be more specific in your meeting request. If we need to consult anyone, DCOA, PFSS, or any other experts, or DHT experts, or AI experts, we don't always get that straight up in your meeting request. You may hint at something, but we have to make a decision to get that consult in. We want to get it in as early too, right? So they can get it on their calendars and their workload. And then when we get that meeting package, so remember, even though we have those timelines, that's when we're supposed to respond. So our meetings are even shorter. So we actually have a shorter review period than when you turn in those package to us at 47 days, right? We may only have 20 to read because we got to get that response out to you in so many days, right? I may not be able to consult the right people in time. And so that means there's a post-meeting comment or a advice letter that's coming out separately. So I really ask in this theme of really what you want to do is please, please, in your meeting requests, be more specific, particularly if you think you're going to need that consult. It's easier for us to pull a consult out once we get the meeting package than to try to add one. So with that, I want to thank you guys for questions, for listening intently. You know, every year we try to give you the most updated things. I thank my panelists from the agency for being here today. I'm going to turn it over to Scotty Kern, who's going to introduce our next speaker. But thank you guys for being here today.